So we have our next speaker after lunch, and we're going to shift gears now to farm technology and how to actually make it work on the ground. Dr. Jeffrey Bewley has spent 20 years testing over 50 dairy technologies, from precision monitoring to automation, and helping farmers to actually apply them effectively. Currently a dairy analytics and innovation scientist at Holstein, USA, Jeffrey has a history of working with universities and major agri-tech companies to develop practical, data-driven solutions. For anyone looking to boost efficiency, animal health and productivity, this session is for you. Please welcome Dr. Jeffrey Bewley with From Innovation to Implementation, Making Farm Technology Work.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the invitation to speak with your group today. And I've been in Australia now since Thursday, so I'm fully adjusted to the time, and it's been a wonderful trip and really a pleasure to get to visit a lot of great dairy industry professionals and dairy farms and dairy farmers over the last few days. So I'm going to talk about technology, and as was mentioned, I've spent most of my time in the last 20 years working with dairy technology. I've learned a lot, I've seen a lot. It's not always been easy. Technology's not always easy, everybody knows that from a day-to-day perspective, but I'm going to talk about kind of our experiences and what we've learned from a practical perspective. First, I think it's important to take a step back and look at how far we've come in such a short period of time. 20 years is not that long of time in the grand scheme of things, and I think back to these pictures which were from my PhD and how far we've come. You know, some of this work that we were doing back, we were looking at automated body condition scoring. That's the picture with the cow with the green dots on her. We were clicking on 23 points around thousands of images. So that was very manual. That was good graduate student work, which was me at the time. That's no longer necessary, right? Machine vision techniques have advanced to where we don't need graduate students to click on that many points to be able to get the ground truth for something like automated body condition scoring. We had to do things like in the picture on the right there, where in order to collect data, we had to move cows past a reader. We no longer have to do that. All that data is transmitted automatically and rapidly and quickly. And similarly, in the picture on the left, on the bottom, that's one of the first accelerometer-based technologies that the industry had that I had the pleasure of working with. But when we were downloading that data, you had to take the device off the cow, you had to connect a serial cable to that device, use toothpicks to work the sand out of the port, and then to connect it to your computer, which would take 1 or 2 hours to download the data from one cow. All that's automatic, all that's quick. So those of you that are younger and getting to work with technologies now recognize how far we've come. It's amazing and it's really exciting. And I think when we look forward, where are we going to be in 20 years? I can't even imagine yet where we'll be, but there's going to continue to be rapid levels of innovation. Currently, I have the pleasure with Holstein Association of overseeing what we call the WKU Smart Holstein Lab. It's at Western Kentucky University. It's a center for exploration of new technologies. And we look at a lot of different technologies and lots of different stages of development. It's fun, it's interesting, it's exciting. We work with mature technologies and we work with technologies that are in the infancy stage. Not all of them work, but I want to share with you some of the things that we've learned from that. I get to see a lot of data every day. So I have access to data like you see on the figure here, where I can identify a lot of information about the production, the behavior, the environment, and the nutritional management of that herd every day. So I'm constantly inundated with data. I have multiple platforms. Unfortunately, and we'll touch on this a little bit more later, this is not the screen that I get to see. In order to pull that data, I have to go to multiple user interfaces to be able to get to that. This is real data, those are real numbers, but it's not in a nice, neat, easy to see format like that. And we look at the innovation that's occurring in our industry, it's unbelievable how many logos, how many companies are involved in innovation in the dairy industry. So this nice slide is put together by the Progressive Dairy Magazine and IFCN Network, but they show and update this every 6 months or so of all these companies that are involved in dairy farm technology. It's an amazing number of innovators in this. And some of them, of course, are companies that we're all very familiar with, many of them represented here today, but some of them are startups and new companies that we see lots of innovation. Of course, not all those startups make it, but it's really exciting when you get a chance to work with some of these startups with the level of innovation that's occurring there. When I think about categorizing the types of technologies that we have, I kind of divide them into a few categories. The first is the wearable sensor technology. Our cows at the Smart Holstein Lab have 7 different wearable technologies, so they have stuff all over them, measuring a lot of information. All this is based on the accelerometer technology that we all have in our cell phones, or if you have a Fitbit or some other human wearable technology, same technology. We borrow that idea, we bring it into the dairy industry, and we're able to measure a lot of information about the behavior of the animal. We can measure rumination time, eating time, grazing time, lying time, activity as a whole. There's a whole lot we can gain from that. And that technology, I think, fits into the category now of being very mature. These technologies can work very, very well. There are lots of examples of companies that have developed excellent technologies that are very robust and work quite well in a lot of different settings all around the world. So this is not as innovative maybe as some of the other things that we look at, but in addition to the wearable sensors, we have a lot of process automation. So in my time here in Australia, I've recognized that labor is an issue for you, it is an issue for us too. That necessitates the need to look more for forms of automation. So although there may not be as much data that we pull from the automation technology, there's a lot that we can gain from automated processes. Maybe that's automating the milking process, the feeding process, just something as simple as pushing up feed. There's technologies to automate foot bath delivery. There's technologies to automate even injections of animals. So lots of things coming down the pipeline to help take away some of that labor challenge by having equipment do some of the tasks on a farm rather than people. There are 2 areas from a monitoring perspective that I'm extremely excited about. One of them is machine vision technologies. Machine vision technologies are going to provide a massive amount of information for us moving forward. We can use a camera system to do something like body condition scoring, like we were doing 20 years ago, but it wasn't automated back then. And we can do locomotion scoring. What else could we measure on the animal with cows? It's a limitless number of things that we potentially can measure with a camera system. Or looking at behaviors. So there's some technologies now that are measuring calving behaviors. So looking at an animal as she approaches calving so we can help manage the calving process. Here's another technology that takes a little bit different approach. This is a technology that we've been working with now for a couple of years. This technology, instead of monitoring the animals, it monitors the people. So this technology, as you can see here, it's monitoring the people in the milking process. You see on the left a case where one of the milkers, she misses a post-dip event. And then on the right, you see one of the milkers that's spending a lot of time on her phone. And you get a report that tells you how well each employee performs compared to their the recommended protocol. And then you get indications of maybe behaviors we don't want to see, like you get an alert saying, hey, employee Joe, he or she is spending too much time on the phone. Or we even had an incident of an animal care problem that the technology alerted us to. So I think there's a lot of potential for monitoring of processes on the farm with the people that we work with also. Then we can extend the idea for monitoring behaviors. This is a technology we've also been working with for a few years now, that it tells us when the animals are lying down, eating, drinking, standing in the stall, standing in the bed, etc. So we've got a lot of behavioral information. Unfortunately, at this point in time, this particular technology, it does tell us all these behaviors and gives us the reports, but it doesn't tell us which cow's doing what, which is leaving a little bit to be desired there. This is a startup company out of the UK that's kind of taking that to the next level of really getting into really detailed behaviors. So they're looking at perhaps some unwanted behaviors like perching behavior in a stall and so forth. So just an amazing amount of information that we can glean from cameras. Now, when I think about cameras, we have to recognize every technology has its set of downsides or potential issues. And one of the issues with technology with cameras is we have to clean the cameras periodically. And cameras can get really dirty really quickly on a farm. And in my experience, it's not manure that's the biggest problem, it's flies. And I can tell you, where's Ross at? Man, from the last few days, you guys have a fly problem here. These flies are aggressive. Whatever you've done genetically to select for aggressive flies, wow, that's amazing. But so flies, I think, will be a big issue with cameras here as they are in the U.S. because of your aggressive flies. So the other area that I really get excited about is milk biomarkers. What can we measure in the milk? Historically, we've thought about the things that we do with our DHI systems. We measure fat and protein and somatic cell count, but there's a whole another set of issues or opportunities we can measure. So, for example, reproductive hormones, we can measure progesterone, we can particularly get into things like pregnancy-associated glycoproteins, so we could do pregnancy detection, do our reproductive management through the milk. There's also biomarkers related to the nutritional status of the animal. Perhaps we could use this for identification of ketosis and milk fever, indicators of inflammation, and there's probably biomarkers that we haven't even discovered yet. The nice thing about measuring in the milk is that we're collecting the samples already. As a scientist, you've already got a tool, you're collecting the samples. What else can we get from the milk? And I think that's going to be a huge, huge opportunity for us moving forward. Another area that I get really excited about is largely focused around artificial intelligence, but how can we look at old data in new ways? What can we do with the new analytical tools that we have to get more valuable information out of data that we've already been collecting? I think there's a lot more we can glean from lactation curves, and there are lactation curves for many metrics on a farm, not just milk. We have lactation curves for rumination time and eating time and lying time. We can learn more from that. We can use artificial intelligence to help us make better reproduction decisions, better culling decisions, trying to optimize the lifespan of the animal. Not necessarily maximize, but optimize how long that animal is staying on the farm in a way that her well-being's not compromised, but also that we are able to maximize the opportunity from the beef industry at the end of her career. We can learn more about responses to rations, and I think that when we look at machine learning and artificial intelligence, it's going to help us to be able to visualize and analyze some of the biological complexity of our operations on an individual farm basis that we haven't been able to do before. And one of the reasons that an organization like Holstein Association USA is so interested in this particular type of data is because of what we can gain in terms of novel phenotypes. In order to do a genetic evaluation, we have to have phenotypic information, and all of the data sources that we've talked about so far provide us with new phenotypic information. So we can analyze and create genetic evaluations for things that we wouldn't have been able to do before. And I see all kinds of opportunities moving forward for that. That's not always easy to do because we have issues like data standardization and data ownership to work around, but really exciting to see what can we get out of these technologies for new phenotypes. As I mentioned, I've worked with a lot of technologies over the years, and I see now a technology graveyard. There are many technologies that don't make it, and there's a lot that we can learn from other people's mistakes or other companies' mistakes. So I'm going to go through just real quickly some of the problems that I see in technologies repeated over and over. The first is physical form problems. There are times when we develop devices for animals that just don't work with reality on a farm, reality of a cow. On the left, you see an example of an ear tag that was supposed to get tympanic temperature. It had a probe that went into the ear canal. we're really excited about this to be able to get physiological, really good temperature. But cows don't want a probe in their ear all the time. So they did a really nice job of removing that probe from their ear within a few days, and that project ended very quickly. On the right, you see a picture of a device that was attached to the cow. It was supposed to increase intake. It had a vibration to the tail that would encourage them to get up. It had 8 D-sized batteries on that battery pack on the back. Didn't take them very long to get that off either, and that little vibration, it just irritated them. Device integrity. These devices, they have to stay put together. You know, we see examples here, pictures of devices sitting in the alley, sitting in the stalls, and obviously it doesn't work in that case. There's a lot that we have to think about with identifying and fixing broken devices, changing devices, and so forth. And ultimately, one of the issues that we'll always have to focus on, and it's the key tenet for what we do, is identification. We still can do a better job with identification of animals around the world, and when we bring technologies in, that becomes even more exacerbated. Another important lesson to learn is that some data is interesting, but it's just not useful. And I love data, but some of the things that I measure, I think, okay, I measured this, but I can't do anything about that. So that is one of the major limits, and I see too many technologies still going out there that provide something interesting, but it's not actually useful to the farm. This is a huge problem. We have a lot of data sources. You guys probably see this every day too, but we have data silos. We have data that sits in one silo that would be nice if it communicated with another, but it doesn't. And this is a real problem and limitation for what we can do with data on a farm. Now, I used to think this was really simple because I'm not a computer programmer, but I can do enough programming that I can say merge by cow by day, right? There's lots of people that can do that, and I thought, that's simple. This is not a technical problem. This is a business problem. Because there are viable reasons why companies don't want to share data with other providers. There are proprietary reasons why they don't. And in addition to that, even if conceptually we want to share the data, there's a cost associated with developing APIs. And you're constantly, if you're a data integrator or working with data, it's a question of how many hours of programming time do I dedicate toward merging this data with this data set, and can I justify that from a business perspective? So this is a really complicated issue. I do think it's going to get better. There are examples of companies all around the world that are developing integration platforms for dairy technologies. There will be multiple players in this. It's hard to determine right now who the winners in this game would be, but I think it's great that there are multiple players that are going to make this better. But that being said, it's never going to be perfect, that there's one great platform that allows us to integrate data from all of our data sources around the world. So what should we think about in terms of success criteria for technologies? It needs to be reliable and accurate in real-world settings. We need to be able to integrate it into how we do things on the farm. It has to be cost-effective for the dairy producer. We have to have actionable insights, and it needs to be shown that it can work through case studies. Reliability of the technology is really important. I have a lot of broken technologies. In fact, every day for the last 3.5 years, I should have graphed this, but I think on every day, the average number of technologies that we work with that's broken are probably 3 to 4. So I'm constantly working with broken technologies. Some of them never break, but this is a real issue for us. The interface that's provided for the user is extremely important. It needs to be intuitive. We want to reduce the amount of time that it spends for the dairy producer to understand how to make that interface work. Most of the time, we need mobile access to the data and some kind of feedback loop to make sure that we have continuous improvement. The data needs to have actionable insights. If I can't do anything about it, it's not that important in the end. So we need to have clear identification of which animals or which situations need attention, but also not just that something's wrong, but what we might do about that if that animal needs attention. Breeding was so easy because we know exactly what to do when that animal's in heat, but some of the disease, it's not always clear what the right action to take is with that data. What makes a technology appealing to the farmer? Needs to be easy to use. There needs to be demonstrated economic benefits. We need to be able to implement this technology without a lot of disruption for the farm and making it work on the farm. The support and training is extremely important. Customer service is the key factor that differentiates the market leaders compared to their competitors. The market leaders are continually innovating, continually looking for better ways to improve their technology. How do we implement technologies on farm? We need to assess whether there's a need for that technology on the farm and make sure that it helps fit our goals. Look at what technologies are out there, develop a budget and financial plan to make sure it makes economic sense. Engage the people on the farm that are going to use the technology. If I buy a technology that's supposed to help something with calves and the calf feeder's not interested, it's not going to be very useful. We need to make sure we plan for how it affects the infrastructure and integration of the data. Make sure we have a plan for training the people how to use the technology. Roll it out gradually. These technologies don't change the world overnight. And we need to make sure we have a plan for maintenance and upgrades and a backup plan for if something goes wrong with the technology, because things do go wrong with the technology. But in the end, I always think back to this. The cow is the center of everything that we do. So all of our technologies, we've got to keep the cow's needs and the cow's life in mind. I hope that I've challenged you to think about some of the neat opportunities that are coming forward and available to us today on our dairy farms with regard to technology. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. I was so fascinated by your talk that I almost forgot to come up and creep next to you on the stage. So thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the audience or online for Dr. Jeffrey at this stage? No one just yet. So I have a question. So as someone who's had to deal with data in silos from lots of different companies before, we've had this challenge for quite some time. Have you seen it work? Has there been an incentive? What's the incentive for people to work together and try and collaborate or share data? Is there some sort of financial way that this can work for those companies?
So ultimately, I think the best incentive was if the end user, the dairy producer, demands that to happen, because that's the end customer. So I think sometimes we in the service industries tend to think we should be the ones pushing for it, but ultimately, if I want it, it doesn't matter that much to the service providers. It's really, does the dairy producer want it? So they're the ones that have the most power in that, because if they think it's valuable, then people will provide it for them.
Have you found that farmers are demanding more integration in when they look for a product to buy?
Yes, but I think we're still at a point where there's not a lot of great options there. So I think probably we tend to accept less than what we'd like because we don't have a better solution at this point. Although, again, it's better than it was a few years ago. You know, for example, herd management software tends to talk pretty well with all the wearables now, whereas 10 years ago that wasn't the case. So we're making progress, but we've got a long way to go there.
Okay, thanks very much. Oh, wait, we have a question. Beth Scott.
Beth Scott, Aurora Dairies. I was just wondering, we roll out a fair bit of automation, and one of our biggest things with automation is the monitoring of automation. And a lot of our, if we think of farm issues, whether it be milk going out of premium, arise from a failure of the monitoring of the automation. Mm-hmm. Have you got any comments around that or any experience in terms of shifts you've seen in the US in terms of the service provider providing more training at the install and those sort of things?
Yeah, that's a real challenge. I mean, I'm amazed sometimes at how much babysitting I have to do of the technologies to make sure, are they on? And I think there are software solutions that could help with that, to provide an alert that says, your system's offline. Like that sort of thing, I see some of that now, but not as much as I'd like to see. And ultimately, like I mentioned in one of my slides there, the training is really, really important. And if you look at the companies that have done the best job in getting adoption, they recognize that they need people on their team that can help train people how to use it, but not just train, but help when there's a problem. And some companies, like I've said that in the past, that there are some companies that I work with where I feel like they must have somebody that's sitting by the phone 24 hours a day, and they will do anything for me possible at any point. And there's other companies where I might be 3 months before I get an answer back. And so there's such a wide range. Ultimately, I think the market tells who the winners are there, because eventually, if you don't have the customer support, then fewer people will invest in that particular type of technology.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all we have time for, unfortunately. But anyone out there who's a technology entrepreneur and wants some free advice, everyone knows who to go to. Thank you.